scrubbing the tomato sauce off my sleeve when I heard the steady sound of water running from the bathroom. My husband's phone, Ethan's, buzzed 3 times on the kitchen counter. He had just left it there before hopping into the shower, as always, completely at ease, not the slightest bit guarded. The screen lit up with a message. Can't wait to celebrate your big win tonight. Same place, 8 p.m. I'll tell her I'm stuck at work again. I hadn't meant to look, but my eyes froze on the sender's name. Alan from accounting. Alan? That name rang too familiar. I had met him at a few company events. Middle-aged, thick glasses, awkward around women, and once apologized to me profusely just for brushing my elbow while reaching for a napkin. There's no way that Alan would send a message that sounded like an affair. I opened the message. A whole thread popped up. It was unmistakable. Lines full of intimacy, skin, possessiveness, and sweetness. Not from Alan. No way those words came from a man. I tapped the profile photo in the app. A blurry selfie under yellow lighting, half a face angled toward the camera, golden curls framing it. I zoomed in, and my stomach dropped. It was Madison, the accountant I'd met briefly at the year-end party. She had stood a little too close to Ethan, and that night, I had smelled Chanel No. 5 on the collar of his shirt. I once told myself it was probably from walking past the perfume counter, but now, the pieces snapped together. The message, the fake Alan, the scent. The odd smirk on his face every time he texted late at night, and every dinner ending with an overtime excuse. I placed the phone back exactly where I found it, as if handling an unexploded device. My whole body was flushed. The kitchen was uncomfortably quiet. Outside, a fine drizzle began falling over Seattle. Footsteps echoed on the stairs. Ethan walked out, shirt crisp, fixing his tie. "Have you seen my wallet?" he asked casually. I turned to look at him calmly. "Today's the Henderson presentation, right?" He paused for a second, just long enough. "Yeah, I told you, might run late, don't wait up." He smiled. Once, that smile melted me. Now it felt rehearsed, sharpened by arrogance. I nodded, watching him walk out. As the door clicked shut, I pulled an old phone from the drawer, one I used back when I worked in the legal compliance department at an insurance firm. I had left that job 2 years ago when Ethan suggested I pause my career to focus on the family. I used to believe that was love. Now, I knew better. He likely just wanted me tucked away in the dark while he lived another life under dim restaurant lights, where Madison waited, wearing my perfume, pitching my ideas, laughing atop the trust I had handed him. I didn't sleep that night. For 3 hours I sat frozen by the window, laptop open in front of me. The glow of the screen lit up my hand. The same hand that once gripped Ethan's during our vows, that once signed a resignation letter to support his career. Now that hand was taking screenshots, logging text threads, saving dinner reservations pulled from Ethan's work email, the same email he once boasted I never touched. I wasn't going to confront him yet. As someone who had worked in legal, I knew one thing. Haste helps people erase traces. For the cut to go deep, it has to be precise and perfectly timed. At 10 the next morning, I called the main office of Meridian Creative, where Ethan and Madison, still stored as Alan from accounting, worked. I asked to be transferred to the executive office. "May I ask who's calling?" "This is Bella Martina. I was senior legal counsel at Halbrook & Stein." My voice didn't shake. Years of courtroom practice had trained it to land every syllable. Seconds later, a low male voice came through. "Richard Levine speaking. How can I help you, Miss Martinez?" It took me 4 minutes to present the situation, brief, clear, and clinical. I didn't say Ethan was my husband. I didn't say Madison was the affair. I simply said I had evidence that a newly promoted employee, Madison Blake, had used work that wasn't hers to earn that advancement, and that work was directly tied to the Denver project budget, which Ethan Martinez was managing. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear a pen tapping on a desk. "Can you come in to speak with me directly, Bella? I'll be there by 3. Richard's office was on the 27th floor of a glass tower in downtown Portland. The last time I'd been there was 3 years ago, during a company holiday gala where I stood among Ethan's team, toasting a project I had helped shape, but that carried someone else's name. Richard Levine, mid-50s, sharp, unsmiling, shook my hand without ceremony. I opened my laptop and projected the files Ethan and I had drafted together. Presentation slides, proposal structure, budget allocation details, not a comma out of place. They had been mine. I'd wrote them with Ethan, late at night in our kitchen, back when I still believed I was his partner, not his ghostwriter. These materials, Richard furrowed his brow, are the foundation of Madison's promotion pitch from last month. I stayed quiet. He connected the dots himself. Part of the Denver strategy, he added. And Ethan Martinez submitted it, didn't he? Richard exhaled slowly. He did. I didn't need to say more. Everything was already laid bare, clear as daylight. On my way out, I saw Madison stepping out of the elevator, laughing brightly with a group of co-workers. A latte in hand, a cobalt blue dress hugging her figure, perfect for her role as the self-made rising star. She didn't see me, but I saw the unshakable confidence on her face. And I knew that soon, very soon, that confidence would have nowhere left to hide. I didn't hate Madison for taking Ethan. I hated how she used someone else's intellect like a commodity to buy her way into the spotlight. And Ethan, the same man who once told me, "You're talented, but the environment I work in isn't a good fit for a woman who's too assertive," paved her path with my sweat. It's fine. I wasn't there to win Ethan back. I was there to reclaim the truth. That evening, I returned home and entered the code Ethan didn't know I had changed 3 days earlier. He wasn't home, of course not. His overtime dinner was no doubt scheduled for exactly 8 p.m. at The Usual Place, an Italian restaurant near headquarters. I opened my laptop, a drafted email was ready, just waiting for me to hit send. Attached were all the data, the evidence, and a side-by-side comparison between the original proposal and Madison's official promotion pack. Recipients, Human Resources, Internal Compliance, and a carbon copy addressed to Richard Levine. I wasn't trembling anymore. I didn't care how Ethan would react. I only knew one thing. In this game, I had just made my opening move. I arrived a few minutes early. Valenti, the restaurant where Ethan often took clients, sat quietly at a corner in Portland's Pearl District, warm yellow lighting and soft jazz masking every secret exchanged behind wine glasses. I chose a black dress, high collar, long sleeves, perfectly fitted like armor, not sexy, not soft, just composed enough that anything I said tonight wouldn't be dismissed as emotional chaos from a betrayed wife. Richard Levine showed up right after me, dark gray suit, charcoal tie, not a word wasted. He gave me a nod, then walked in beside me as if we were attending a board meeting. The host's expression shifted the moment he recognized Richard. "Mr. Levine, your table is ready. Please follow me." We walked past rows of elegant tables, wine glasses glinting under the light, low murmurs and the sound of chairs sliding. And then I saw them. Ethan and Madison, seated near the window at the back of the restaurant. She leaned toward him, the candlelight catching the glint of a necklace. A gift I had seen on last month's statement, back when Ethan said it was for his mother's birthday. They were laughing. His hand rested lightly on hers. His wedding ring, once claimed to be inconvenient during presentations, had conveniently disappeared. Before I could say a word, Richard's voice rang out, just loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Is that Ethan Martinez?" A moment froze. Ethan looked up. Our eyes met, and I had waited 3 days for that exact look. Not confusion, but pure primal fear. The kind of stare a man gives the past he thought he buried, now standing 10 feet away. I smiled, soft but cold. "Good evening, Ethan. Madison, looks like tonight's quite the celebration." Madison jerked her hand back, her face draining of color. What are you doing here?" "Having dinner, just like you." I turned to Richard. "Mr. Levine, this is Madison. Recently promoted accountant thanks to a proposal that we might want to reevaluate." The air around us thickened. Every clink of silverware vanished. A waiter stood nearby, unsure whether to approach. Ethan shot up. "Bella, this isn't the place. You're overreacting." "Oh, and what would you call this? A business dinner?" I pulled out my phone, opened a photo. "How about this? Madison posted this picture with that same wine glass last Tuesday, didn't she? The exact night you said you were working late at the office." I flipped to another. "And this? Dinner reservation under Ethan M. right here, 10 days ago. Same night I made our anniversary meal and waited 3 hours. Ethan stiffened. Madison stared at her lap. I thought at the very least you'd be better at hiding things. But no. It's all sloppy. Messages, photos, the company proposal, even the same phrasing I edited for you over the past 3 years. I turned to Richard. You've reviewed it all, haven't you? Richard nodded slowly. I can't believe a senior employee allowed this to happen. And the accountant, I added, copied an entire strategic framework from material that wasn't hers. Madison stammered. I thought. Ethan told me he had full rights. Full rights to use someone else's work to trade for his own advancement? I asked, locking eyes with her. Or full rights to shift blame when it all falls apart? Ethan stepped closer, voice lowered. Let's talk at home. I stepped back. We will, but not for apologies. I'll be preparing documentation for internal audit. I looked at Richard. No need to cause a scene here. But I want it clear. Everything he's built was rooted in deception. Madison sat frozen, clutching the edge of her dress. Ethan turned away, speechless. I left first. No dramatic ending needed. The silence behind me said everything. The house was still dark when I walked in, but I knew Ethan would be back soon. I turned on the kitchen light, sat in the same chair where he'd spent countless hours tapping at his laptop with a cold cup of coffee. Nights I believed he was chasing success. And me? I cooked, I boiled water, I wiped sweat from his brow and handed him every draft, every edit, every idea I once sharpened for court. I folded away my career so he could unfold his future. And he used that gift to push me even lower. The door opened, Ethan stepped in, blazer wrinkled, eyes on me like he'd just woken up from a nightmare. Bella, he said softly, the same tone he used whenever he forgot my birthday or skipped my fertility checkups. Sit, I said evenly. We need to talk. He slowly pulled out a chair, avoiding eye contact. The air in the kitchen felt as thick as the layer of dust I'd ignored for years, thinking family was something to preserve, not confront. What do you want me to say? He asked. I didn't answer right away. I pulled a stack of papers from the drawer. This is our savings account statement. Remember that $12,000 withdrawal last year? You said it was for a real estate platform investment, with Sam. Ethan swallowed hard. His eyes didn't leave the documents. I pushed another page forward. Wire transfer receipt. Recipient, Madison Blake. Exact amount as the deposit on the apartment she just moved into. Anything you'd like to revise? He closed his eyes, tilted his head back. I'm sorry, That's not all, I cut him off, still staring. I called the clinic. They confirmed the person who requested to stop the ovulation support prescriptions was you. He said nothing. 3 failed IVF cycles. 3 times I thought my body wasn't strong enough. 3 times I blamed myself for not being enough. Meanwhile my throat tightened. You chose to sabotage it because you were afraid a child would ruin your double life. Ethan lowered his head. I didn't want to hurt you. You already did. I stood up, palms braced against the table. Not just by sleeping with Madison, but by making me question my own worth, by turning trust into something soft and bendable in your hands. He shook his head. Bella, you've always been too hard on yourself. I just thought, if you didn't go back to work so soon, if you let me stabilize a little more. Stabilize? I let out a laugh. Tight, bitter. You mean handing my work over to Madison is stabilizing? Building a secret life is stabilizing? I walked to the fridge, took out a bottle of water, but didn't drink. Do you remember what you said when I told you I wanted to go back to the law firm after I recovered? Ethan shrank into his seat. I answered for him. You said it would make you feel like a burden. I repeated the words slowly, like reciting a legal clause. You turned my ambition into guilt. And I believed you. Ethan reached a hand toward me, but I stepped back. Don't. You had your chance to touch this life with truth. You chose lies. Over and over. And you thought I'd never find out. You gambled. With me. He whispered, I'm sorry. I don't need it. My voice was low and solid as stone. Because sorry can't buy back 3 years of failed treatment. Can't erase the 3 proposals I wrote that carried someone else's name. Can't undo the night I sat alone, reading the internal magazine that praised Madison. Using my own words. He said nothing. I walked toward the stairs, stopping on the 2nd step. You once asked me what I feared most. I used to think it was not being able to become a mother. I turned my head. But now I know. The scariest thing isn't losing a child. It's losing yourself. Piece by piece. Because you trusted the wrong person. I walked upstairs. I didn't cry. I was no longer the woman who waited for her husband to come home to eat cold dinner. I left the kitchen while Ethan sat silently in his chair, unable to say a word. He thought an apology could patch up the entire system of trust he'd shattered. But no. The anger had passed. What remained was clarity, and I knew what I needed: truth and justice. I didn't call a lawyer right away. I called Jenna Quinn, my old law school rival, now a partner at a firm specializing in forensic audits and corporate disputes. You want to go after Ethan legally? There's the soft route, and there's the one that leaves him with nothing, Jenna said, her voice calm as ever. It's not out of anger, I replied. He used my name to build a fraudulent career. I want the truth exposed, by law, not emotion. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a shadow in my own home. By day, I played the forgiving wife, went to marriage counseling, cooked, smiled on cue, nodded gently at Ethan's endless cassette tape apologies. By night, I became a different Bella, old and new. I extracted every transaction record from our secondary account, once labeled Ethan's Retirement Investment Fund. In truth, it was where he rerouted project funds from Denver, the same project that got Madison promoted to management in just 8 months. Jenna and her team didn't just confirm the financial trail, they cross-referenced it with internal emails I had accidentally swept through from Ethan's laptop. Virtual meeting logs, fake expense reports, invoices for skill training at the hotel Madison had checked into that week, all compiled in a steel-tight file. Then, just as I thought I had everything I needed, an anonymous message popped up in my LinkedIn inbox. You don't know me, but I know everything about Ethan and Madison. If you're willing to listen, I have what you need. I thought it was spam, but after a quick check, the account was real. It belonged to Lena Morris, 24, former admin assistant to Madison before switching departments. 3 months ago, she quit suddenly, no explanation. I arranged to meet her at a small cafe in the Alberta district. Lena arrived on time, petite frame, eyes tense. She sat down, reached into her bag, and pulled out a silver USB stick. These are audio recordings Madison asked me to save, said they were just in case, but I think she used them to control Ethan in case things went south. Recordings of what? I asked, heart pounding. Private meetings between her and Ethan. Recordings where he talks in detail about using the strategic draft you gave him last year as the foundation for Madison's promotion proposal. And multiple times Ethan said, Bella has no idea, she trusts me completely. I froze. Why are you helping me? Lena looked me in the eye. Because Madison did the same thing to me. Took credit for my work, put her name on it. I stayed quiet because I needed the money. But once I realized you were Ethan's wife, the person who actually wrote that draft, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I gripped the USB tight. Thank you. Truly. No need to thank me. Just do something that makes sure they can't keep getting away with this. That night I listened to the entire set of recordings. In one of them, Ethan chuckled, light, casual, and said, Bella's good, but she doesn't have the kind of flexibility this company needs. She always does the right thing, and the right thing doesn't always get rewarded. I paused, my hands trembling, not from pain, but because it was time to turn everything into a counterstrike. I emailed Richard Levine requesting a private meeting before the regular board session on Monday. I didn't spell things out. Just attached a file. Internal fraud and misconduct. Preliminary evidence. This time, I didn't walk in alone. I walked in with the truth. At 8:45 a.m., on Monday I entered Meridian Creative's headquarters with Richard Levine. No one spoke in the elevator, he simply nodded as the doors opened on the 19th floor. The boardroom level. The air outside the meeting room was thick, the polished wooden door was closed tight, no sound escaping. I gripped the folder in my hands, not out of nerves but because justice was about to have a voice. At exactly 9 a.m., Richard opened the door. Inside was a long oak table, 10 chairs, 8 of them filled. 2 women, 6 men. All names I'd heard Ethan mention as people you don't want to upset. Ethan was already there, dressed in a dark suit reviewing papers. When he looked up and saw me, his eyes froze, just for a second, then flicked toward Richard, searching for an explanation. But he didn't rise. Madison walked in less than a minute later. Same designer handbag, same flawless makeup. But her lips were pressed tight, no smile in sight. "Let's begin," Richard said briskly. I didn't take a seat. I stood at the head of the table, opened my bag, and took out a silver USB stick. "My name is Bella Martinez. Some of you may know me as Ethan Martinez's wife. But today, I'm not here in a personal capacity. I'm a former legal advisor, specializing in corporate financial fraud. And what I'm about to present directly involves this company's internal operations." I tapped the remote. The first slide appeared. A breakdown of Denver project funds versus suspicious transfers over the past 6 months. Just over $41,000. Rerouted to a secondary account under Ethan's name, then withdrawn to pay a real estate firm in Vancouver. That was the deposit on a luxury apartment on Columbia Street, where Madison Blake currently resides, I said. The expense wasn't properly disclosed, lacked finance department approval, and violates project budget policy. Board member Robert Kern interrupted. "Can you prove the link between the funds and a company project?" I advanced the slide. Payment receipts, bank statements, and finally, an internal email between Ethan and an anonymous accountant. Temporarily file it under expanded marketing. I'll adjust once we formalize it. The room fell silent, like the oxygen had been sucked out. I continued, voice steady. And that's not all. The project that led to Madison Blake's promotion was largely based on a strategic draft I edited for Ethan, sent from my personal email, an address that was never meant to be shared. I played the recording. Ethan's voice. "Bella wrote that part. She's good, but she's not a cultural fit. Madison presents it more digestibly." Then Madison's voice. "Think Bella will find out?" "No way. She's too busy managing house stuff." An invisible slap echoed through the room. Madison shot to her feet. "These are private recordings. You can't use them here." Richard cut in. "They were made on company equipment, stored on company servers. Per policy, all data belongs to the company, especially when tied to serious misconduct." No one objected. I closed with a single statement. This isn't just plagiarism, it's abuse of company resources, financial fraud, and a severe ethics breach. If you need further proof, everything is in the USB drives before you. Board member Karen Hollis, Chief Operating Officer, turned to Richard. "Your recommendation?" "Immediate termination of both employees, full reimbursement of misused funds, and submission of all evidence to the State Tax Investigation Bureau." Another board member added, "I support that." Then another, then all. Ethan stood up, panicked. "You're overreacting. This is a misunderstanding. I brought in the highest revenue this quarter." "And you're also the reason we're now exposed to audit risk," Karen replied coldly. Security was called. Madison went pale. Ethan took a step toward me, voice low. "Bella, please, everything I did was for our future." I looked him dead in the eye. "You destroyed that future when you treated me like a tool. And now you'll have to face the consequences. Alone." The final document was placed on the table. I picked up the pen and signed my name. Bella Martinez. That day, I didn't wear black, and I didn't cry. I chose a cream blouse and light gray pants. Simple, yet polished, just like the decision I'd made. The divorce was finalized, no disputes, no fighting. I turned down every proposal for extra compensation that Jenna, my lawyer, had once advised me to pursue. "Are you sure?" Jenna raised an eyebrow. Ethan could lose double if you want. I know, I replied. But I don't need anything from him, I just want it to be over. I didn't want to keep anything that might tether me to a man who once treated me like a convenient shadow in his life. I didn't need the extra money to start over. What I needed was space. Space I could fill with something better. Addison Blake left Portland just days after that board meeting. Rumor had it she'd tried transferring to a branch in Arizona but got denied. Eventually, she wiped all her social media accounts. No one saw her at any professional events again. I heard she was applying to a small firm in Boise, but the internal memo Richard had sent to industry partners had shut nearly every door. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't bitter either. I felt nothing, and oddly enough, that was the freest I had ever felt. A week later, I received an email from Karen Hollis, the operations director I had once convinced with undeniable evidence in that meeting room. The first line was short: Helen McAdams would like to invite you for Friday morning coffee. Helen, the only woman on the board whose eyes hadn't looked at me with curiosity that day, but with recognition. We met at a small cafe in the Goose Hollow neighborhood. The air was still foggy, but her gaze was clear. I heard about you from my ex-husband, she said, stirring her coffee with a silver spoon. He's an attorney. Always mentioned you as one of the most promising students of your generation. I let out a soft laugh. I used to think that promise had to be sacrificed to build a family. Helen tilted her head. A mistake many women make, thinking we only get to choose one or the other. After some conversation, she handed me her business card. McAdams & Wren, Legal Advisory and Corporate Ethics. We're building a new division for internal audits and post-crisis advisory. I need someone who doesn't just know the law, but understands how systems get bent from the inside. Then she looked at me directly. I need someone like you. I didn't answer right away. But inside, I already knew. That evening, I moved the rest of my things into my new apartment. A small third-floor unit with windows facing the Willamette River. Not fancy, but flooded with light. I placed an armchair by the window where I'd read documents, sip tea, and look out over the city I once thought I'd lost myself in. My phone buzzed. A message popped up. I know I was wrong. If you ever loved me, please give me a chance to make it right. Ethan. I read it once. No anger, no bitterness. Just emptiness. I set the phone down. No reply. What he was looking for wasn't here anymore. The following week I walked into the offices of McAdams & Wren in an olive suit and low heels. None of the new staff knew me as Ethan Martinez's ex-wife. They only knew I was the new advisor, the one Karen and Helen trusted to help rebuild a culture of transparency. In a Friday meeting, Helen stood before the entire team. We live in an era where everything can be hidden behind data and beautiful language. Our job is to peel back those layers. Not to expose others, but to protect the values that matter. I looked at her, then around the room full of people, and I knew I had chosen the right place to begin again. 6 months later, I stepped out of the office building at 5:45 p.m. The early spring air in Portland was just crisp enough to invite a walk before heading home. I no longer raced home to cook dinner. No longer checked messages during meetings to see if Ethan was coming back early. I no longer reminded myself to stay quiet to avoid adding stress. I lived alone in an apartment with a tiny balcony overlooking the park. Every morning I brewed my coffee the way I liked it. Strong, low sugar, no complaints. I chose my flowers by season, hung art that reflected my taste, and slowly rebuilt the pieces of myself I had hidden for over a decade. My career didn't return with fireworks or press releases, it returned in emails from colleagues. Can you help review this contract? Then short feedback lines. Sharp analysis. Thanks, Bella. Gradually, I was heard again, not because of who I married, but because of who I was. One night, while reviewing documents on my laptop, my phone lit up. A name I once thought would live forever in my heart appeared on the screen. Ethan. Hadn't saved his number, but the tone was unmistakable. I miss you. It's been 6 months, and I think about you every day. If there's a chance, could you let me fix this? I stared at the message for a long moment. Not because I was unsure, but because I felt nothing. I put the phone down. No reply. I met up with Lena, the young woman who gave me the most critical recording in the entire unraveling of truth. We had lunch at a small vegan spot in Hawthorne. She was starting a new job at a nonprofit supporting women escaping toxic workplaces. "Thank you," Lena said, smiling. I thought I was helping someone else, but I ended up helping myself, too. I lifted my glass. Sometimes all it takes is one right moment to change everything. We clinked glasses, slightly like new hope. I also began writing again. Not a book, not a memoir. Just notes each night, what I'd learned, what I'd seen, and what I no longer wanted to carry. Writing wasn't for anyone else now. It was how I listened to myself, something I'd forgotten for years. I wasn't planning to fall in love again, but I wasn't closing myself off either. I went on walks, joined a small book club at the public library, and for the first time in years I allowed myself into conversations, not to fill a void, but to fill myself. One night, I sat on the balcony, notebook on my lap, lavender pots swaying in the breeze. I looked up at the sky, something I rarely did before, and I whispered one word: "Thank you." Not directed at anyone, not to fate, not even to Ethan, but to myself. I used to think strength came from big, bold moves, but now I understand. True strength lives in the quiet choices that never waver, like gathering evidence instead of exploding, like walking away without a fight just to claim my freedom. And now I step into a new chapter, where I'm no longer a shadow in someone else's story. I'm the one writing my own path. Bella's journey isn't just about surviving betrayal, it's proof of the quiet power of clarity and self-respect. In real life, many lose themselves trying to hold on to a broken relationship. But like Bella, when we dare to face the truth and walk away to honor our values, we don't just escape pain, we rise into a stronger, freer, and more intentional version of ourselves. What do you think of Bella's choice? Would you have done something different in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow our channel for more heartfelt, true-to-life stories about family and strength.